Hey, good afternoon. My name is Daniel O'Connor. I'm the Gourmet, and we are here in Tegucigalpa, Honduras, day 20 of our quarantine. And today I'd like to share with you a technique for making a cream soup. We're going to use a roasted turkey stock as the base. There'll be actually no cream in this, so it'll be significantly more healthy, and I'll earn good points with my wife and the rest of my family for cooking a little bit healthier this week, as we've all started to with lots of over the quarantine days. Focus on the technique today. Let's think about how we can adapt this technique to just about any type of vegetable. The other day we made a beautiful mushroom soup using this technique. Today I want to use the technique for asparagus. So we have a roasted turkey stock, beautiful, fragrant, and that'll give our asparagus a nice little balance. So I have the ends of the asparagus, the tips of the asparagus, and we're going to use 3 types of onions: a regular yellow or Spanish onion, a little bit of scallion, and these are shallots that came straight from our garden. The thickening agent will be called a roux, and the roux is a combination of oil and flour, and today we'll be using some unsalted butter, and we'll go over that technique. A little bit of white wine, salt, pepper, and some herbs of Provence will give a little bit of fragrance. There's a little bit of lavender in here, and I always like the combination of lavender with the asparagus. So give me just a couple minutes to put everything together for our mise en place, and then I'll take you through a very, very quick process of making the roux, making a flavorful stock from the asparagus, the onions, and the herbs, and then we'll actually put everything together and puree it in no time at all. First, I'd like to show you how to make a roux. A roux is a combination of fat and flour. We're going to use whole unsalted butter and some regular bread flour here. We want to do a 50-50, so it's an equal proportion. So it's 50% butter, 50% flour, and then we're going to mix it. All right, so we're melting the butter in a preheated pot. We don't want the butter to brown, and we're going to add a little bit of flour. So this is 1/4 pound of butter, and it's about 1 cup of flour. And what we're looking for here is that wet beach sand consistency. We want to cook this roux. We want to cook it to a blonde golden brown color, and then this will be added to our very flavorful stock, and this will be really the most important part of the whole soup process, is preparing this roux, so you can see the consistency. This is like, think about being at the beach, the tide is going out, and your toes are just on that water line as the water goes in and out, in and out. That's the consistency that we're looking for here. It looks like beach sand, and you can start smelling the flour as it cooks, and it becomes sort of like a roasted nut, roasted peanut, roasted hazelnut aroma, and that tells us that we're doing really well. The other thing is that we're going at a very, very low heat here, because we want this process to cook slowly. So as this continues to cook, we will start preparing our vegetables, and we will bring our stock up to a boil, and we'll add all the other ingredients to that. We'll make a very flavorful asparagus infused stock, which will then be thickened. So let's let this cook out for a few minutes, probably about 8 minutes in total, constantly stirring so it doesn't get brown. We want this to cook evenly throughout. Okay, so we have a beautiful roasted turkey stock. This was a turkey that we roasted whole, then we saved all the giblets and the bones and the skin and all the pieces that nobody wanted to eat. We put them and made a nice stock out of that, and then that stock becomes the base for our soup. So what I want to do now is we're going to infuse this stock with the broccoli stems, the broccoli points, the 3 types of onions. So I have a little bit of shallots, a little bit of onions, a little bit of leeks. We're going to chop these up kind of fine. I'm going to chop up some of this asparagus, and we're going to add that to this, and then we're going to puree it, and then we're going to thicken it with a little bit of the roux that we made it a little bit earlier. So just give me a couple minutes here. We're going to start chopping, cutting, and infusing. Cheers. Here we have our asparagus stems, onions, shallots, and some scallions. I left them a little bit long because I want this to cook for about 45 minutes or so. So we're going to bring this up to a hard boil, reduce it to a gentle simmer. We're going to cover it, and we're going to really allow these vegetables to cook in this flavorful stock. So I'm going to add a little bit of the herbs of Provence. Whenever we work with dried herbs, we want to rub them through our hands a little bit. So I'm just doing this to release the flavor, and you get just a spectacular smell. So we're going to let this cook out a little bit. I'm actually going to put a little bit of wine in here as well. And since we're going to cook this for a long time, we always want the wine in some type of reduction. So this is about 1/4 cup, and that helps with the herbs. So we're going to bring this to a boil, reduce it to a simmer, and really let these vegetables start to cook out. So here we have our asparagus stems and ends and pieces. You can see it's very soft. It's been cooking about an hour in this beautiful roasted turkey stock. So it's the turkey, it's the onions, it's the herbs, it's a lot of asparagus stems. And what I'm going to do now is we have our roux, which we made. I'm going to slowly start adding the stock to this, and the secret to the roux and making it thick and getting the velvety consistency is to allow the product to boil periodically. You can't add all the stock at one time, so you have to add a little bit of stock, bring it to a boil, let it thicken, then you add more stock, bring it to a boil again, allow it to thicken. You go from consistencies of like Play-Doh to honey to pancake batter. Play-Doh, let's just say Play-Doh, pancake batter, honey, and then to creamy. And that's really what we're looking for, is a little more on the creamy side. So we've got a hot roux, we've got our stock, and I'm going to start adding this, and you can see the reaction instantly. And I'm going to go with about 7 or 8 tablespoons here. We're going to allow this to boil, and we're going to allow it to thicken. And you see, as it thickens, as these glutens expand in here, it'll go to that very thick consistency of, I like Play-Doh. I think Play-Doh is about the best description that we could ask for. So now we're going to turn the temperature down a little bit, and we're going to go again. And bring it to a boil again. So it's really important that every time we add stock, we allow it to boil, because at some point this is going to thicken. We're going to put it to a simmer, and some of these impurities, the impurities, are going to come to the top, and we want to get those out of there. And if we add all the stock at one time, what we typically have is a bit of a disaster. It's not smooth. It's little clumps of flour everywhere, and it's just kind of crappy result. Doesn't taste good, doesn't look good, and the texture in your mouth is all funky. So I'm gonna get all the stock out of this pot first, then we're gonna puree those stems and onions in a blender, and then we'll add that to this mix as well. If you, a little competition. If you get, must be the hour. If you get, if it's a little too thick, you can add more stock or a little bit of water if you have to. If it's a little bit too thin, then you reduce the temperature and you let it gently reduce. At this point, we're going to shift from a spatula to a whip, and we're going to start whipping this nice, thick, and smooth. So it's really important, again, that we allow this mixture to boil each time before we add more and more stock to the pot. So this was what, 4 ounces of flour, 4 ounces of butter, and then we're going to add about 6 to 7 quarts of our vegetable stock when it's all between 4 and 6 quarts, I think is fair, but almost a gallon, gallon and a half of vegetable stock when it's all said and done. So we'll keep doing this over and over. You can see a nice velvety consistency. That's what we want, but we need this to boil now, thicken. We'll keep adding more stock to the process, and then I also scrape down the sides to make sure that nothing is burning or sticking there. Thanks, babe. Sit. Good boy. Okay, so again, allowing it to thicken, boil, add more stock, boil, thicken, add more stock, boil. You have to go through this process until you use all of the stock, and then the end result is a pretty loose, thin, maybe a little bit thinner than heavy cream like consistency in the pot, because these vegetables will all be pureed in a blender, and then they'll be added to this as well. So this is coming along really nicely. The aroma, the flavors, smells in the kitchen are pretty nice at this point. So we're close. We're only about 5 minutes away from this soup being ready to be seasoned and served. So what we did was we saved some of the asparagus points for garnish, and a little fine julienne of sweet orange peppers for color. So I like the consistency of where we're at with the velouté, the stock with the roux. These are what's left, and I saved about 20% of the stock that was in the pot to help puree all these ends and pieces. So I'm going to try to get all of them in here in one shot. And then of course you need a little bit of liquid to help with the pureeing. And then we'll add all the liquid. And we're going to just puree this thing down to nothing. So we start with a low velocity first, and eventually we'll get it going a lot faster, a lot higher. But what we're trying to do now is because the broccoli stems are a little bit fibrous, so we really want to get those chopped up and going down as low as possible. And then we'll add this to our velouté, and then we'll just season. Hand on the top of the blender to avoid major accidents. Once you smell this, I mean, it's got a really strong, beautiful asparagus perfume, and then we're just going to take all of this and pour this right into our soup mix. And you're going to see that the soup takes on a nice green hue from all of that asparagus. So we're going to allow this to come up to a boil. We're going to start seasoning with some salt, pepper, a little bit of acid, maybe a little bit of apple cider vinegar, or possibly even some rice vinegar, and maybe just a dash of aminos or some type of umami, something, a fermented sauce of some type, worcestershire or umami. So I went to the immersion blender because there was still a few pieces of stems and things in here from when I added the stock. So I wanted to make sure this was a little smoother, a little less fibrous consistency. So I'm going to use the immersion blender for about 5 minutes at the high speed and really get this as silky as possible. So at this point, we're ready to do the seasoning. So really what we're looking for is a nice, beautiful balance of salty, sweet, acid, vinegar, and umami. And maybe a little bit of, that's pretty good. So I'm gonna add a little bit of aminos, which is a soy sauce alternative. It's not nearly as salty and it's all vegetable. We're gonna add a lot of cracked pepper to this, and I might put a little bit of cayenne in here as well, just to punch it up for a little bit. So it's about 15 turns. A couple twists of salt. We're gonna stir that up, and then we're gonna taste it one more time. And then I'll see if I want to add a little bit of a hot pepper or some cayenne pepper to this. The temperature is great. There's certainly plenty of salt. We need just a little punch. So let's try a little bit of vinegar. We'll do like 2 capfuls, maybe 3. One, I'm gonna start with 2. We're gonna stir it up again. We're gonna taste it one more time. One more, for sure. Maybe 2 more. And the acid just helps balance off the rest of the flavors, getting that flavor profiling. And then the last piece will be a little bit of some hot pepper, maybe. Yep, so we're good. Just up a little bit. In the Latin world, we use 6 elements of taste, so that picante, that pepper, that spice, that little hot tickle at the end of your throat when you finish tasting something, but a tickle, not a burn. We're not burning the lips. So this is a shout out to my friend Carlos, award-winning Lengua de Fuego, Carlos Castillo, with his new line. So we're gonna add a little bit of this, and I'm gonna go with maybe a tablespoon. This is a combination of jalapeno and a Scotch bonnet pepper. They call them chili garnish here. And we're just gonna see how good this is. That's really nice. I'm gonna add just a tiny little bit more to the fold, just a tiny little bit, but I can already feel a gentle tickle. It helps right here, right down here is really what we're looking for, is that the gentle tickle of spice to let you know that you're alive and it tastes good. So last chance, Daniel. I think we're ready to serve. Oh yeah, that's really nice. I hope everybody enjoys it. Doing great. Go Bucks. Okay, so today our official taster, because it's formal night, is our very proper corgi, and this is Sam. Great.
I think it's hot.
Last is just a little bit of a balsamic reduction. It'll also help a little bit of sweetness, a little bit of acid, and a little bit of color.